All right, let's deconstruct some American propaganda.
And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you look at
States.
let's talk about the fact.
I mean, slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
That's Jilian Michaels, the insufferable chick from The Biggest Loser. I've seen a number of thoughtful people make relevant critiques of her statement, but I want to add a piece to the conversation that I think is missing, because all of the critiques that I've seen have attempted to nuance that 2% number to show that that number is really misleading or just downright manipulative. Regardless of the percentage of white people that held slaves, the number that matters more to me is the fact that those white people enslaved 90% of black people in this country at the peak of slavery. So whether it was 2% of white people or 20% of white people, they enslaved 90% of black people. And the vast majority of white people at the time were completely okay with that. The North didn't fight the Civil War because they had so much compassion for black people. They did it to keep the Union together. Abraham Lincoln himself said, "I'm not concerned with the slaves, I'm concerned with keeping the Union together." He didn't care about freeing black people, he cared about the economy. And white Americans love to credit themselves with ending slavery without considering the aftermath of abolition. The country ended slavery and then criminalized being black. This is the reason the MAGA regime is trying to whitewash history. They don't want you to learn about the history of black codes and convict leasing and sharecropping. They don't want you to know that black people were promised reparations that they never received, but the white people that enslaved them were given reparations because they lost property. They don't want you to know that policing in America started as slave patrols. They don't want you to know that the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery had a clause or an exception for people who were convicted of a crime. And now, because of the prison industrial complex, we have the highest rate of imprisonment in the world, and they're providing slave labor for major corporations. They don't want you to know that when black people built communities, violent white mobs destroyed them and murdered people. They want you to think that white people in the North were so much better. But like Smoke said in Sinners, Chicago ain't nothing but Mississippi with tall buildings. Hell, I'm from California, and I experienced more overt racism there than I have in Georgia. So yeah, that 2% don't really mean much to me when 90% of black people were enslaved and produced all the cotton, which made up 60% of the country's exports at the time. And to this day, we got nothing to show for it. Why? Because of white rage.